All right. Thank you for that introduction, Priyanka. So I am Dave Mather. I'm the head of commercial at ZapWorks, and I'm joined by George Martin, our product manager of learning and support. How you doing, George? You good?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Priyanka. Yeah, doing very well. Thanks, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Excited to dive in. But before we do that, I just wanted to give everyone a quick introduction to Zappar and what we do and kind of how our business is split into two sections. So we have a creative studio, which we call Zappar HQ, where we build AR campaigns for big brands. And then we also have the AR content creation platform, which we call ZapWorks. And that's going to be the focus of this webinar today. We'll talk a little bit about the tool suite, how you can start creating content with ZapWorks, and then also some of the delivery options as well. WebAR obviously being the focus, but we also do app-based delivery as well, and a few custom options there thrown in the mix. So yeah, with that said, I just wanted to quickly go into an update which is really important in terms of WebAR, and that is the iOS 14.3 update. And what this means for marketers and AR creators who are delivering WebAR content through social media platforms is that they can now give users access to that content within the social media app and indeed third-party apps as well. So previously, the UX or the user experience would be that would get pushed across to Safari or the browser, whereas now the AR content creation can be accessed directly in the app, which is a massive update and a huge benefit for the end user experience.
Yeah, it's a real game changer, that one, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it's awesome. You can see me there in the GIF testing it on our ZapWorks experience. Cool. Well, that said, George, I'm going to hand over to you to dive into the CMS and get everyone started and introduced to ZapWorks.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so as an introduction to the ZapWorks CMS or content management system or my.zap.works, any tool, which we'll go through in a little bit, all the different tools that we have, but any tool that you use, you'll kind of be based around the content management system, and you'll be building projects within the content management system and doing things like team management and your accounts and billing, and that's all based on the CMS that we call my.zap.works. So I guess the easiest way to kind of showcase the CMS and my.zap.works is to jump straight in and actually show you that. So I've got this up here, and we have a 30-day free trial. So if you did want to sign up to ZapWorks, just head over to my.zap.works, log in with your email, and you'll have a free 30-day trial, which allows you to use any of the tools that we'll showcase in a little while anyway. But as I mentioned, no matter which tool you actually choose to use, you'll be starting and finishing in a way on the CMS platform. So that's what I'm showcasing here. So my.zap.works or the CMS, the first thing you'll notice when you log in to my.zap.works, or if you've been using it, are these tiles here. So these tiles are projects. And each of these tiles or projects contain one AR experience or one AR project. So again, no matter which tool you use, for example, you can see the tool up here, which again, we'll go into in a little bit more detail in a little while. But this project specifically here that I'm highlighting is created in our studio tool. And then we have published, or we haven't published that one actually, it says unpublished, but we can then publish our experience made in studio to the content management system, where we can then view things like analytics, which again we'll get onto in a little bit, and we can look at triggers, which again we'll look at in a little bit more detail, and do a bit of project editing in there as well. Cool. There's a few other things that I'd like to mention on the CMS, and that is analytics, which we'll look at, and team management. So you can have we offer different plans for ZapWorks. for example, a hobbyist plan, which is an individual plan, which is completely free, or the business plans, which have different tiers. And for business plans or enterprise plans for that matter, you can have multiple team users or team seats on a single workspace. So you don't have to just be using this workspace on your own. You can have different team members, which can be editing projects or viewing analytics or doing the team management side of things in there. So some of our business plans have 3 users, and our enterprise plans can have 10 users, and you can simultaneously be creating projects with different tools, but all sat on one workspace, which is really nice, which is a really nice feature. And another update also that we've recently added is this downloads and SDKs page or hub. And if you click on that, you can actually access all of our tools and all of our Universal AR SDKs, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail, and you can download them all from here. So that's a really nice addition that we've recently just added. So I thought I'd mention that one. Cool. So I'm just going to head back into our deck quickly. Please feel free to pop any questions you have throughout any of this into the chat, and either me or Dave will do our best to answer. So before we go on and look at the specific tools that we offer, I thought we'd look at the tracking types that we offer within these tools. So the first one I'm going to look at is face tracking, and it's quite self-explanatory, and it's used across many different apps. Obviously, the big ones are Snapchat and Instagram at the moment. And face tracking is the ability to track 3D or 2D content to the user's face. So you would open up either into the web or into the Zappar app, point your front-facing camera at your face, and then whichever content that you've added to your experience will then track. And we've got some nice Zappar models on the right-hand side, modeling the helmet experience that you may well have seen, which is a really nice one on there. So that's one of the tracking types, face tracking. We also have image tracking, which is one that we've used for the past 10 years and is a really, really amazing tracking type. And, although world tracking, which we'll get onto in a little while, is becoming more and more apparent, image tracking is still great for what it does. And this is the ability of actually tracking, again, 3D or 2D content to an image. So this image could be a poster or packaging or anything of that sort. And our technology looks for the image that you've trained up, or what we call a target image, and then actually shows your content on that. And as you can see on the right hand side, we use this for, I think it was a menu that we did for one of our meetups, and you can see that we actually have a video of our CTO Connell that pops up, and he talks you through some stuff, and that's completely tracked to that image that you see there. And then last but not least, we have world tracking, which is the ability to place 3D content or 2D content or videos into your actual real world around you. So you can look for look in your environment, and then you'll have a tap to place button that will appear, and then you can actually place content in the real world around you without having to look for your face, or without having to have an actual target image in there. And this is really great for, as this example shows, the furniture examples, which we've got a really great tutorial for, to showcase digital furniture in your room. But it's also great for some other different things, and I'll showcase one of them in studio in a second as well, which is kind of like an L&D type tutorial as well, or experience as well. Dave, is there anything you want to add about any of them tracking types that I may have missed out on?
I don't think so. I think world tracking specifically, like you said, is great for product visualization. So not just furniture, but also larger machinery. If you're working in learning, training, and development, and you want to visualize those kind of systems or processes, or indeed take people on a tour around your office or facilities. When we do all go back to the office and are not working so remotely, or if you do want to deliver kind of just-in-time training to people at home. And then the last point on that as well is just kind of the delivery through the web. So it's important to mention as well, With Zappar, we have something called instant world tracking in the web at the moment. We're looking to deliver kind of full SLAM tracking implementation for the web later in the year. But what instant tracking allows you to do in the web is kind of instantly place content to a horizontal plane, but it doesn't enable you to kind of scale that to kind of a real life level. Would that be fair to say, George?
Yeah, exactly that. So to reiterate that point, full face tracking works seamlessly in the web. Full image tracking works seamlessly in the web, and then world tracking currently, as in the ability to detect a ground plane in your environment, doesn't currently work in the web, but we have a alternative to that, which is instant world tracking, which is, yeah, as Dave says, the ability to actually place content in the world, and from a user perspective, even though you're not kind of detecting the ground around you, from a user perspective, it looks very similar to world tracking. Just the technology behind it is slightly different.
Absolutely. And Laurie just asked there when that will be available in terms of that full fat world tracking. Yeah, very soon. It's at the top of our priority in terms of the product roadmap. So in the kind of coming months, and we'll keep everyone posted on that update.
Nice, perfect. There was also another question which I will just answer quickly as we're on the tracking types. Can you do true world sizing with world tracking? And the answer is yes. We also have another kind of tracking type, but it's a merge of the two, which is called extended tracking, which is really good if you want to get real world scale, and that uses the image tracking, so you can track to an image first of all, and then it also uses a kind of variant of world tracking, so it uses the image to get the specific sizing and then uses world tracking to place it in your world. And we've got a forum post on that, just search extended tracking, and there's some really interesting information about that. There's also one other thing I'd like to mention, which is I believe quite unique to us, and you don't have to use one of these tracking types within a single experience. You can use multiple, so you could have a face tracking experience that starts off looking at your face with content tracked to your face. You have a simple button that says world tracking or flip your camera. You can tap that button, flip the camera, and you can place that same content that was tracked to your face or different content in the world, and you can flip back between the tracking types as well, which is really nice. You don't have to just be set to one tracking type within one experience. You can actually alternate between them at runtime within the experience itself, which is really nice.
Awesome. Cool.
Perfect. Cool. So getting on to the tools themselves, we've talked about the tracking types which are inbuilt within the tools, but let's showcase some of the tools that we actually have on offer. So the first one, I'm going to just skip Studio for the time being, and we'll get back to it in the middle. But ZapWorks Designer, which is over here in the bottom left, is our browser-based 2D image tracking tool set. So Designer is amazing for what it does, but you lose quite a lot of the customization that you would get if you use either Studio or Universal AR, which we'll showcase in a little while. But Designer is amazing for creating image tracked experiences that are reasonably simple. There can be some user interaction, and I'll showcase that in a second. But it's amazing for creating, if you want to just add, let's say, a video to some print materials. So let's say you wanted to add a video that's tracked to the top of your shoebox. Designer is a great tool for that, and it's really, really simple to use, and you can pick it up without even really needing to look at any tutorials on documentation. And that's one of the amazing things about it. And it's built in a way that I like to say is the PowerPoint of AR, in the sense that it's different scenes, which are kind of like different slides. So you go from one scene to another, and it's incremental in that. So again, just like I did with CMS, I think the best way to learn or the best way to showcase these tools is to actually jump in and show them. So you can access, again, Designer through the CMS system. So if I head back into the CMS, and I'm just going to click back out of the Downloads and SDKs hub and go back to that main CMS page with all of our projects. And what I can do is, as you see here, we've got a designer project. And as I mentioned earlier, designer is browser-based. So it's completely built within the browser, and you don't need to download a software or install anything onto your PC or Mac. You can access it completely on the CMS. So if we click into the designer project, and this is one I set up earlier in true Blue Peter style. And as you can see here, we have the Open Designer button. So we can actually just click on this big red button here to open up into our designer tool. So this is designer, and you might notice the scenes that I mentioned earlier, which are like the slides at the top here. So we're currently in scene 1. And this project that I set up is kind of the most you can do with designer, I'd say. So it's kind of like a treasure hunt game, I guess, where you have to put the pieces together. And we'll publish that in a second, and you can have a play around with that. But as an overview of designer, you have the scene in the middle. So this is here, kind of where all of your content will go. And then on the right-hand side, you have the components that you can build up to create a designer experience. So you can add in images, you can add in a component which is photo albums. So that's a pre-made component where you can add multiple images together. Videos, if you just want that simple video track to a target image, you can do that really, really easy by just adding in that video. Sound, text, buttons, contact, and calendar events. There's a whole range of different components. And if I just scroll through the scenes, you'll notice that I've got different components or different images and buttons added to each of these. So as an example, if I click on one of these buttons up here, which are just individual images, I'm given some different options related to what I've selected. So down here, you can see that this is a part 1 image. And it's got its properties, and I can replace this image with another one. But it also has something called actions, which are really cool. And actions allow you to do something when something's happened on that button. So this is an on-tap action. So you can tap on this button and it will take you to another scene. So let's say I wanted to tap on this button and I wanted to go to a scene. I think one of these has a on-tap action, which goes to scene, it'll be this one. So this one, and then I can just set it to go to scene 3, like so. And that means that when that button is tapped, it will take me directly to scene number 3. Cool. Another thing to mention with designer is we have something called grab and go, which is if you're looking at the target image and you look away from it, your content will basically become screen relative and not be tracked to that image. So one thing I'm going to also mention is the publish and preview buttons along the top here. So you'll notice this with our studio and our designer tools. Both have preview and publish options. Previewing allows you to have a 5-minute test code or trigger, which you can scan and you can play around with and you can test it out and it won't go anywhere. Published means that you're actually publishing that experience to the CMS and to the trigger, and that means that if you've sent across the print material or the QR code or the Zap code, then your client or user base can actually scan it and they can get into the experience itself. So let's say I'd played around with this experience, I was ready with it, I was happy with it. I can click on the publish button up here. It will pretty much instantly publish, and now I've got that experience published. And if I wanted to test to see how this experience worked, I can then open up my print material, which will have a trigger on it, which we'll go through in a little while, scan it, and we'll actually see the experience that we've made. Cool.
Nice. Just to jump in quickly, a quick question from Silver. What is the upside of using your framework? I'm guessing by our framework you mean ZapWorks Designer or Studio, as opposed to just ThreeJS and React. I guess it really depends what you're comfortable with, right, and your skill set.
Yeah, it might be maybe not looking directly at Designer or Studio. It might be using Zappar as well as using ThreeJS and React, which we can get onto in a little while. But there are benefits over using, say, something like Designer or Studio, and that's the benefits are they are more simple to use, in all honesty. As you can see, Designer is really simple, browser-based, and you can set up things really quickly. So let's say you wanted to create a, going back to that example of, let's say you had a print material, you wanted a button, a video, and that's all you wanted. You can create that using our Zappar SDKs with React or with Three. But in all honesty, if it's just that you want to create that really simple experience, then you may as well just use Designer and have it instantly published from there. But that answer might be, or that question might be answered in a little while when we look at our Universal AR SDKs. Perfect.
Nice.
Cool. So the next tool that we're going to showcase is Studio, and Studio is slightly different from Designer. So if we go back to our CMS, and you'll see that we have a Studio project set up here. If we click on this and we go to our Go to Studio page or Go to Studio tool button, we'll actually be taken to download the software, and that's because Studio is a downloadable piece of software. So you'll have to install that and then run it. So once you've installed it and opened it, you'll be shown something like this. So Studio is a really amazing toolkit, and you'll notice some similarities if you use things like Unity, which we'll showcase in a minute, things like timelines, and if you've used any kind of game development software or 3D design software, then you'll notice some similarities between them. But Studio, cool. So Studio is our downloadable software, which is has 3D enablement, so you can add in things like 3D models, and it also has a scripting environment, so you can have greater customization with Studio than you would with something like Design.
So yeah, as George mentioned, Studio really is our kind of 3D AR content creation platform. So we also have a Sketchfab integration as well. So you can have instant access to over 2 million 3D models and import them directly into your Studio project, which is super useful. Studio also enables you to have kind of a larger file size limit compared to something like Spark AR. So Spark AR, I think, prohibits you about 4 megabytes per project, whereas with Studio, although we suggest that you keep your file size low, you can definitely access more of 8 to 10 megabyte per project when you upload and publish to the CMS that George was talking about. And ZapWorks Studio, like George was saying, also gives you animation possibilities and timelines, which I'm sure he'll show you very shortly. And we also have a nice dynamic lighting render engine in there as well to really bring out the physicality in those 3D models.
Yeah, so as Dave mentioned, Studio has full 3D capabilities, so you can import 3D models, and yeah, it has things like lighting, has a full scripting custom environment, so you can basically have a lot more customization with Studio built experiences than you would with designer made projects. And that comes with the scripting environment, but it also comes with things that we call controllers and states. So this is a project that we actually have as a tutorial. So if you do think this looks interesting or really cool, then you can follow along. It's called the Exploded Eyeball tutorial. And yeah, I really recommend following along. I think it's a 3-parter and it really gets to grips with Studio really well. But Studio has its main viewport in here, which is full 3D. This project is actually set up as a world tracking project. So when you preview or publish this experience and launch it into the Zappar app or equivalent, then you can actually place this eyeball in your world, the 3D eyeball in your world, and you can tap on these buttons along the bottom here. And we have some transitions and kind of simple animations set up using controllers and states, which are kind of the building blocks for these transitions and interactions in Studio. As a quick overview of this project, what we have in here is the 3D model of the eye, and we can orbit around that, and you can see that it's a full lit 3D model with some nice reflective materials on it. We have a couple of images at the bottom, which are classed as buttons, as we've got some actions, which are really simple user interactions that we can set up. And then along the bottom here, in the bottom left, we have a controllers panel. And in here, if I just scroll this up slightly, we have things called controllers and states. So if I was to toggle between these two states here, you'll notice that we have some really cool transitions from one state to another. And this is a really nice way and really easy way of actually setting up transitions and actions within Studio itself. So we can toggle between these, and they have automatic transitions being moved from one another. And also we have some more states down here. So we can toggle between these, and you'll see that we have some image changing and some button changings. And also down here, we have another controller and its different states here, which allow you to actually change the text that's viewed in here. So this is how it's set up kind of from the back-end perspective of when you're creating a Studio project or a Studio experience. But when the user actually scans it and plays with it, we have things called actions, which if I select on, say, this hotspot, you'll notice up here we have an actions panel, and these are, if that action is tapped, it will activate them controllers and states that we've set up. Cool. Are there any questions, or is there anything that you'd like to add about Studio, Dave, that I may have missed out
on? I don't think so. Alan's asking, is video recording available in UAR? And if so, is it able to continue recording when switching from front camera to back camera? Don't know if you know the answer to that one, George.
Cool. So video recording specifically for things like ThreeJS and React 3JS and A-Frame can be set up for the web. Unity specifically doesn't have a web recorder, so it just is a Unity specific thing, not anything on us. I think it's just how their WebGL builds are created. So currently you can't set up video recording in the web. There shouldn't be any difference between if you're in your front-facing camera or your back-facing camera, and you should be able to switch between the two while video recording is enabled. Does your 3D render engine in Studio support PBR materials? If no, is it in the pipeline? Yes, great question, and the answer is yes. Studio supports a whole range of 3D models, the standard ones that you'd expect, FBX, OBJ, and it also supports GLB and GLTF models as well. So if you're importing a GLTF model and it has PBR materials, they should work completely fine within Studio. You'll just drag and drop them, and they should be ready to go. Cool.
Nice.
Nice. So heading back into our presentation, we have Universal AR, which we've mentioned slightly, if this loads. Cool. Nice. So Universal AR, which is our reasonably new list of SDKs or packages for already well-known languages and toolkits. So we're going to showcase Unity in a little while, but Universal AR allows you to use Zappar's camera and Zappar's tracking types, which we mentioned earlier, and allows you to integrate them into a language or toolkit that you already know, which is really exciting and really cool. And we've seen some amazing projects. Poplar have made some amazing projects as well using Universal AR. And it's really amazing because you can utilize the knowledge that you have with other languages that already exist. So if you have a JavaScript background, or if you have a ThreeJS background, or if you are a Unity developer, you can now create amazing AR experiences using Zappar's camera and Zappar's tracking types really easily. And then you can also deploy to either a native app or WebGL. So you can deploy to a native app in the same way you normally would, or you can deploy to the web through ZapWorks, and we can host that all with you, and we make that really easy as well. Anything to add on that little bit, Dave?
No, it's just worth mentioning, I guess, that React and ThreeJS is our latest one. We released that last week. We have a blog about that from our CTO, Connell Gold, if you want to check that out. But that's also really exciting as well. Combining the React framework with ThreeJS, I think, opens up a whole world of new possibilities. Is that fair to say, George? I mean, I don't use React myself, but I've heard it's very cool.
Yeah, and it's super simple to set up. So if you have a React background, or if you've used it before, you just literally need to integrate Zappar's SDK with a few lines, add the Zappar camera, add the tracking type, and then you're ready to go. And you can locally host that to view it, or you can publish that and host it on the web using ZapWorks. Or if you're an enterprise client, you can actually self-host that yourself if you wanted to go that way. Cool. So again, I think the best way of actually having a look at these SDKs or these projects is to actually open up the toolkit and showcase it. So if you've used Unity in the past, you'll obviously be very familiar with this view. So this is Unity, and I've already set up a quick Unity project with all of the Zappar SDK package imported and ready to go. This is a super simple project, but I wanted to keep it simple just to showcase how easy and how nice it is to set up using the Zappar prefabs and using the Zappar resources folder. So all you have to do is download the Zappar package, which is a ZCV package, and all you need to do is download that from that Downloads and SDKs hub that I showed you on my.zap.works, and then open up Unity, double click on the Zappar package, and it will import it all for you. And then you'll be given a Zappar folder in your assets folder. And within the Zappar folder, you have a few different things. The main ones you'll probably be using are in the resources folder, and we have the prefabs. So in here, we've got prefabs which are already set up for you, and these include things like the Zappar camera, which we've got in our scene here. So we've got a user-facing camera in this. If I select on this, we've got some Zappar-specific options here. And then there's also a few different prefabs for the different tracking types that we've gone through. So there'll be a face tracker prefab, which we've already got imported. And there's also the instant world tracking prefab and the image tracking prefab as well. So we're using face tracking for this example, and this is the helmet example that we looked at earlier. So all I've done is I've just imported a normal 3D model, added the Zappar camera user facing, as we're going to be obviously using face tracking. So we want to be looking at our face. Deleted the main Unity camera as we don't need that anymore. Added in the face tracker prefab, which comes with a head model, which just allows you to kind of position your content, which you can see. That's the head model in there. It won't appear when you preview or publish this project or build it. And then we also have a depth mask, which just means that your actual head in real life is occluding some of the 3D model when you actually view this experience or project. And then, yeah, I've just dragged in the 3D model of the helmet into there as well. So the great thing about the Unity package is that you can preview this project in play mode. I don't think it's going to let me because we're in Zoom, but you can literally just click on play mode and you can view your content and it will run in there. Please be aware that if you're using an instant world tracking type, then you'll have to actually build this to test it because it just won't work in play mode just because that's the tracking type that it is. But you can play mode preview image tracking by just holding up your image and your content will track, or face tracking is super simple, as you'll be looking at your face anyway, so you can see your content tracking in there. So once you've created your project and you're ready to go, you can either build your project for a native app, which you'll do in the exact same way you would have done for any other app, and it will go through the app process on the app stores, or you can build your project directly for the web. So you just need to go into your build settings, change the output to WebGL. Zappar also gives you a kind of preset view that you can select, and that just gets rid of some of the bars that Unity will add to the web browser, and that's in the player settings here, as you can see. So just select on that and just make sure you've got that selected, as it removes some of the added value that Unity has. And as soon as you've done that, you can just build and run, and your project will be zipped up. And that project folder will include the index.html file, everything that you need for it to run, and then obviously your assets. And if you want to host this, or if you want, or when you're ready to host this with ZapWorks, all you need to do is take that zip folder, head over to the CMS. If I showcase this on here, head over to the CMS, and then all you need to do is create a new project on the CMS, the same way we did for our designer and our studio projects. And then what you can do is you can just drag in that zip folder into your project on the CMS, and ZapWorks will do all of the hosting for you. And it will give you a URL which will be unique to your workspace, and you can click publish from there, and then your content will be live. Your Unity project will be live on the web. Ooh.
Nice. I think I could even manage that, George. and I'm a marketer, so.
Nice. Are there any questions about Universal AR specifically for me while we jump on over to look at the new ZapBox?
I guess the other point about Universal AR is that you can make use of Unity's render engine as well, so like physics and stuff like that. Is that worth touching on?
Yeah, exactly.
Same with ThreeJS.
So all of these toolkits, languages, Unity especially, have their own amazing functionality. So exactly as you mentioned, Dave, Unity has an amazing physics engine, it has an amazing particle systems engine, and they're things that Studio doesn't have. So you can utilize these functionalities that these languages and toolkits already, but merge in and integrate the Zappar camera and the Zappar tracking types to create some really, really amazing AR experiences. Awesome,
cool. We've got one question from Gustavo, who's asking, does it work in all browsers on mobile? So it's probably worth mentioning that WebAR currently only runs in Chrome and Safari. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a really great doc actually, which is a compatibility article on our docs page, which kind of says best, works okay, and doesn't work at all. So I can link that in a second if you like, but it's on our Universal AR SDKs documentation. But yeah, most browsers, it will work completely fine, seamlessly. Some more obscure browsers, it may not work as expected, and then there's some browsers that it just won't work. But the main browsers that you will have on most devices, it should work without any hitch.
Perfect. Cool. And I guess on top of that as well, if that wasn't enough, we also have a mixed reality headset called ZapBox. And this is kind of the third iteration that you're seeing here. So this mission or this project started around 5 years ago with our Chief Research Officer, Simon Taylor, going, hey, I'm seeing all the kind of HoloLens stuff and all those kind of high-end headsets coming out. I wonder if we can do that, but for $30 instead of $3,000. And we've been through 2 iterations before this one, which were much more cardboard based and a lot more like Google Cardboards. And most recently, we've just completed on the Kickstarter for all new ZapWorks and is now fully funded and has developed that kind of original mission into an entirely new form factor. So you can see here, we've kind of developed what were cardboard headsets into what we're now calling wands, and have buttons that you can interact with and engage with content and pick up content. So it gives you a much more immersive experience and access to that kind of HoloLens experience or Magic Leap experience, but using the smartphone in your pocket and for $40 as well. Anything to add on all new ZapBox, George?
No, just that we're really excited for the release, and there's obviously been a big hype for it, and yeah, it's close to being out there now, and yeah, we're excited for it.
Definitely, yeah, bit of a labour of love, ZapBox, but we're super excited to get that one out there.
Exactly.
Nice. So just to kind of round off here as well with the CMS, we also have an analytics platform that's directly within that CMS that George just showed you. And with our analytics platform, you can track everything from how many scans your experience got, which country, geography those scans came from, when, so what time of day people were scanning your content. This obviously becomes really powerful when you tie that with physical produce. So for example, we did a campaign with Chiquita bananas. And because of our analytics platform, we discovered that people were engaging with that content around lunchtime, and which obviously fed back to the brand and enabled them to obviously discover when people were eating those bananas, which, you know, it's quite obvious that people eat them lunchtime, but you could extrapolate that and go further and just give your users or customers that additional kind of depth of data that they wouldn't already have access to. And then on that second row as well, we also have like which device, how long, how actionable. There's reams of data in there as well. And we also give access to Google Analytics as well on top of that. There's a couple of caveats with that, which I'll talk about in a minute, but that just gives you access to even more data. And if you are a regular user of Google Analytics, you know what possibilities that provides as well. You can also access Google Analytics with Universal AR. Is that right, George?
Yeah, so most of the analytics that you'd want to kind of track with Universal AR will most likely be through GA. We can get the number of views of the Universal AR experience, but things like dwell time and a few other of the analytics that you see on screen here for Universal AR projects are slightly difficult, or a bit more difficult to log from our analytics due to the fact that if it's built for the web and someone is in a different tab and they don't close out of it, we can't tell whether that project has kind of been cancelled or closed or rescanned, which we can tell a lot more if it's a studio or designer made experience. So yeah, if you want to make or track your Universal AR projects and events, then Google Analytics is probably the way to go.
Nice, great, cool. Well, let's move on to triggers then.
Nice. So we've mentioned triggers, or the way to launch an experience or project, a few different times. You can see the main ones on the screen here. I'll go through them really quickly. Zapcode on the left is a way of launching your experience or project into the Zappar app or WebAR. Your user will first have to open either the WebAR platform or the Zappar app. and then scan the Zap code for the experience to launch. So there's a bit of an extra step in there when you're using a Zap code, but we still don't discount it fully. It's still a really good way of launching your AR experience. A QR code, which is obviously very recognizable now and being used more and more, is another trigger, and this is great for WebAR experiences. So a user can just open their camera app or a QR code scanner, scan the QR code, and it will launch their experience or project directly into either the web or the native app. And that is reducing the barrier to entry, and it removes that step of the user specifically having to open the app or launch into the web themselves. It will do it all for you. So it removes one of them steps. A deep link is kind of like a hyperlink, and it's great for emails or social platforms. You can just send them a link, they tap on that, and it will launch their experience directly, similar to how a QR code does it. And then a custom code on the right is similar to a Zap code, but we can actually customize the look and the feel of that code. Cool.
Nice. So we also offer a couple of custom solutions as well. Obviously, with the kind of evolution of the AR industry, it's becoming more and more important for brands and businesses to really own that full customer experience. So you can see from some of the examples here, we've done this for the likes of Coca-Cola and Unilever and Kellogg's and Shackleton Rum and people like that. And what this enables you to do is expose a custom splash screen, essentially a custom web page that users access that AR experience through. And adjacent to that as well, you also get a custom URL. So it could be your name, I think it's .ar.web, or a variation of that as well. So you also get that custom URL and that kind of full branding experience tied to your AR content. So this becomes really powerful when you're developing great AR content, but you're also allowing your clients or your brand itself to really thrive in that experience as well. So that's one of the custom solutions we offer. If you want to speak to us about that, please do get in touch. And then the second part of this, not only do we deliver WebAR experiences and allow you to build AR WebAR experiences, we also enable you to develop app-based AR as well. So we've done this for the likes of Coca-Cola. You can see the Minnesota Vikings, who are an American football team. They embed the Zappar technology within their app, which enables them to deliver face tracking or image tracking or world tracking content from within that app and completely reskin it as well, which is what that kind of white label option to the far right there as well. And then we also offer the free Zappar app, which is great for kind of internal teams who just want to test AR content on the fly without having the need to brand it at all. And that's completely free to download from the iOS or Google Play Store.
Perfect. And then finally, we've already touched on it a little bit, but Universal AR, especially when you're building for the web, we've mentioned just then that there's the splash pages for when you're creating either using Studio or Designer, and it takes you to that custom splash page that we can customize for you, or if you want to just use the Zappar one, it will take you to the red Zappar splash screen. And we need them splash screens for Studio and Designer made experiences to access things like camera permissions and to play audio for videos, and there's a few other reasons why we need that. But if you're creating using Universal AR, so if you're creating using Unity, ThreeJS, React, and so on, then you're actually creating the website itself. You're not just creating the experience. So you don't need to have a splash screen. This example that we've got up here, which is our ZapWorks project, does have a splash screen that we've put together, and that's built within Three itself. However, you can completely skip this stage if you wanted to, as you have full control because you're creating that website itself. You're not creating an experience to be launched within a website. So you have full control. We still recommend to use a splash screen just so your user has a bit of detail as to what they're going through, and you can also use the launch button to tell the user that they need to turn on camera permissions and the other permissions that they might need. So we do still recommend it, but it's not a necessity for Universal AR made experiences or projects. Cool.
Nice.
Nice. Does anyone have any questions for us before we end?